Sup, y'all, it's me, it's your boy Asmongold, and I just got finished reading all of the new nerfs that are going to be added into Hellfire Citidel LFR and also into normal mode. Now, this caught a lot of people by surprise, including myself, because, usually they don't make nerfs this big in the middle of the tier, and it was also met by a lot of controversy. There were people who were glad, because now they can kill normal mode Archimond, or, for fucking some guilds, normal mode Gorefiend, and, for whatever other reasons, that they're glad that these nerfs are happening. And there are also, of course, a lot of other people saying that normal mode was already too easy, and especially they're upset that the way that these nerfs were added into the game and the implementation of these nerfs, and that's one thing I really do want to talk to you guys about in this video, and also what these nerfs and what kind of this what does this really mean for raiding going forward, what does this mean for raiding in Legion, all that kind of stuff. Now, the reason that they were kind of upset or confused and all that other stuff is because usually whenever Blizzard does a nerf, that's like they just basically nerf an ability. It makes it do like 20%, 30% less damage, and it becomes either inconsequential or not really as deadly as it used to be. But Blizzard has a new way of handling this, is that they just take the ability out of the game. It's just gone, right? And so, like, things that you have to worry about, you don't anymore. It's not that it doesn't do any more damage. It doesn't even happen. And so I want to kind of read you guys some of the changes that actually happened and what the hotfixes actually are going to be, the nerfs are going to be, so you guys can get an idea of what it really is. Kilrog Deadeye, Heartseeker, and the Blood Globule that it spawns does less damage and has less health. Hellfire has High Council. Dia Dark Whispers, Wailing Horrors do 30% less damage. Gorefiend no longer uses Shared Fate on normal or Raid Finder difficulty. That's like a mechanic gone. Gorebound Construct, Hunger for Life, and that's the little skeletons that chase people around. Hunger for Life is what they cast whenever they reach their target, and it explodes and it pretty much kills them and anyone around them. And now it only affects the fixated target on normal difficulty. And so this is actually really funny, because one of my boys was telling me today that this exact thing happened to him. They were in a feast, and they had somebody run the little skeleton into the raid, blow up the entire raid with the feast, and it was on normal mode difficulty. So kudos to whoever figured this one out. It was very, very targeted hotfix. Tyrant Valhari, the two auras in stage 1 and 2 basically do less damage. Zorak, the Pyromaniac, no longer creates, not never. Chaotic Fellblaze, if it fails to impact a player on normal or Raid Finder difficulty. Unstable Void Fiends, Volatile Void Step, that's the thing that they cast that you got to move out of. No longer spreads Creeping Void, and that's the purple fire if the explosion hits somebody on normal or Raid Finder, and that's the same thing with the Pyromaniacs. And so those two abilities actually made the fight kind of hard. Not there anymore, it's gone. But that's nothing. That's nothing compared to what they did with Archimond. Archimond no longer uses Wrought Chaos on normal and Raid Finder difficulty. Nether portals created by Nether Banish no longer summon Living Shadows on normal or Raid Finder difficulty. And so those two abilities, like Archimond had two abilities, now he doesn't. He just don't even cast them at all. It's not like that you can ignore them or anything. No, they just don't happen. And so I find that very, very interesting, and I'll tell you guys the truth. I'm glad that they're handling it this way. I really am. The reason for that is, like, back in the day, I try to kind of not really have nostalgia goggles on with this, but I do think that the way they handled normal mode to heroic back in Burning Crusade or Wrath of the Lich King, which was much better. In normal mode, the bosses had less mechanics, and in heroic mode, they had more mechanics. The mechanics basically did relatively the same amount of damage from normal to heroic. Heroic obviously did a little bit more, but really the difficulty in the fight was learning the new mechanics that were added into the fight rather than kind of perfecting the old mechanics. And so seeing this change, and it also makes it, because actually a lot of people, as I said, a lot of people were pissed off about this. And so Ian Hasekostas, who's one of the lead game designers of World of Warcraft, and my understanding is that he works mostly with raids and everything, went ahead and he responded to some people who kind of had criticisms about this. We certainly haven't consistently been successful in doing this, but as we reflect on how normal mode difficulty has turned out, we'd rather remove mechanics from normal difficulty entirely than leave them in but make them so non-threatening that they can be ignored entirely. The latter approach hurts clarity because you can look at an encounter and see 3 to 4 mechanics, but there may actually only be 1 to 2 that you truly need to worry about. And I think that that's very important, because once you kind of train train people in ignoring mechanics, and you kind of have people used to, oh, fuck rock chaos, don't worry about this, don't worry about that, and and then you have it, and you move them up to heroic mode, and then suddenly all these abilities that they've kind of practiced being shitty at now kill them. It kind of does create some problems, and also, well, wait, how does this actually work? And so instead of kind of making people learn consecutively and, I guess like iteratively, they just kind of throw them into the fire, and, the way they have been handling it is that, well, the fire just doesn't hurt. And so it's really good to see that they have made this I guess like a design philosophy change in a way. Removing mechanics from normal also means that, in effect, going from normal to heroic now introduces some additional mechanics, just as going from heroic to mythic always has. This adds some additional depth to the experience of learning a boss on a higher difficulty, rather than just having the same encounter with larger numbers, which is something that I've criticized before in the past. It's like whenever you go from like LFR to normal mode, it's basically LFR or normal mode just has bigger numbers. And the worst one is like you go from normal mode to heroic mode, and so you spend like 5 times as much time like dealing with this, like getting people together, doing 5 times as much damage, I guess maybe for some people, but trying 5 times as hard for gear that's slightly better, by killing bosses that have slightly more health, by doing slightly more damage, and then you get gear that has a slightly different color palette and also has slightly bigger numbers. It's just not really that rewarding, the transition from normal to heroic. And so, having this change to where you're able to actually do these new mechanics, and, that there is kind of a real step up, a noticeable visual step up from normal mode to heroic mode, and then again to mythic mode, kind of, I guess it gives people more of this sense of progression rather than just doing the same thing over and over and over again, aka repetition. And so people were kind of curious to be like, well, who is really the target audience for normal mode? And what audience is kind of intended for each difficulty? Friends and family groups, and so those are people who basically suck, but they don't want to kick the people out of the group who suck because it's their brother, whatever. That's what normal mode is for. Now I kind of have a mixed feelings on making a mode in the game where performance doesn't really matter. I don't really think that's I don't really agree with that entirely, especially, well, we'll talk about that later. I'm going to explain this first. So normal mode is, I guess, like intended for friends and family, raiding guilds, just general raiding guilds, not serious raiding guilds, but just raiding guilds. That's what heroic is for, and hardcore raiding guilds, that is, of course, what mythic is for. And so they kind of have this stepped out, and so each kind of different group of people has like their own difficulty that's intended for them. Now, also, another thing that I really do want to say is what I was talking about a second ago, is that, what is really kind of the, I guess, like the benefit of creating these raids, and I'll also talk about something else that's a little bit off topic, but kind of relevant to this as well, is that right now, I would consider like all players who want to have any sort of real in-game experience in World of Warcraft really do have to raid. There's really, as I said many times, like they're all roads lead to Hellfire Citidel, and they really do kind of pigeonhole everybody into the same content. Raiding, honestly, like raiding has gotten nothing but better ever since, for the entire, Cataclysm was pretty good. I guess like Firelands was awesome. Dragon Soul, and then like Mists of Pandaria came out. Mists of Pandaria rating was amazing. Words of Draenor rating was also amazing. And so they put a lot of work into the raids that we have now. And you can tell, and I mean the gear that drops is like it's very well designed. And so they put tons of work into this into the whole raids and making sure that people see these raids. And so because they've done that, because they put so much of their resources into the raids, they have to find some sort of way to justify that. And by justifying that, they kind of make it to where everybody has to basically experience this raid in one fashion or another. I don't really think that's a very good way of handling it, and I wish that there were other alternate ways that people could enjoy and play the game that didn't really have to do with raiding, because then that would probably take some of the pressure off of them to make these changes, to make mechanics very easy, or make it for people who are brain dead or just not paying attention. Whenever you kind of create a mode in the game that's extremely easy, and then you expect people to go on and do the higher difficulties, I think that you're going to have a lot less people doing that, as if you were actually making two separate raids and one person was supposed to transition from one raid to the other one, in the same way that kind of Heimal was with BRF, but that really wasn't handled very well either. And so anyway, I think that, as I said before, this is very good change, and I'm very glad that they're kind of removing abilities rather than nerfing them, because it is kind of confusing for people. Like, they don't really know what the hell is going on, and why is this ability doing more damage, training them to be shitty, and then punishing them for it later on. And honestly, I think that we can see a lot of people are kind of talking about, like, are they going to merge like normal mode in LFR and Legion? Now, I think that a lot of people would like really kind of want to see that happen. I would, and I know that a lot of people have been talking about that. Also would like to see it happen. I don't really think it will, though. If they're going to do that, I don't really know how they could do it, but either way, it'll probably piss a lot of people off. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just I don't really think that they are going to do that, which kind of leads into another bigger issue that I was going to talk about that I didn't. Now I guess I am now. Is that I think that Blizzard like kind of has created this environment where everybody kind of expects to have some sort of a way that they can beat all of the content in the game. And they're kind of, I would say the word would be afraid to, tell somebody, no, you're not good enough to see a certain boss or to see a certain encounter. It's like, think about like all the outrage that happened. Like, not really, but there were a number of people who were pissed off just because they didn't get to see the High Imperator Margok thing where Cho'Gall comes in the last phase and kills High Imperator Margok. We didn't even know that happened, and we killed Cho'Gall in phase, like, was it like phase like 9 or 12 or whatever of High Imperator Margok on Mythic. And so people were pissed off about that, and just more and more and more people kind of do expect to have everything given to them without really any real effort whatsoever. And is that really good for the game? I would argue that it's not. And these normal mode fixes, though, I don't really think play into that. I think that kind of making a heroic, an actual real step up from normal mode is a good thing, not only for kind of giving players the sense of progression that they're fighting, this boss that has new abilities and everything like that, but it also kind of gives people, again, it's not training them to do something wrong and having people to kind of like, they don't really know what they're really supposed to, fixate on and worry about whenever they're doing normal mode, because none of this stuff really does a lot of damage. And so all of these things kind of come together, and I can understand why a lot of people are pissed off about this. Normal mode, in my opinion, normal mode Archimonde is pretty hard for people who suck, and really whenever you compare the raids now to the raids in, like, let's say Burning Crusade or especially vanilla, they're extremely difficult compared to what we used to see. So if you want to compare like casual raiding now compared to casual raiding in Burning Crusade, which is aka Karazhan, like really whenever you think about, like, Attunement and Huntsman had like 3 abilities. Like, I think that there are mobs that are in like Mists of Pandaria just like just walking around and like, well, no, I mean, like, the rare spawns in Mists of Pandaria have more abilities than Attunement and the Huntsman does. It's ridiculous. And so those bosses were extremely easy to do, and you compare that to something like a Hellfire Assault, where you have to deal with all of these different, the ammunition, take the ammunition up, fight all these different types of mobs, how to learn how to deal with each type of mob, and everything like that. And so really players kind of have a lot of a lot more expectations on them now than they used to, and people have not gotten better. People have gotten better in some ways, but they haven't in others. And what this really kind of creates is it creates an environment where new players and players who would kind of be able to move into the raiding scene, they're not really able to, because, for a number of external circumstances, it doesn't even really have to do with their own player skill. If you have a shitty computer, there's no way you can do most of the mechanics on bosses now, because you have to react so quickly, and, whenever you take into account, like, a new player's reaction time, not really, ready to expect that, and then also a shitty computer and everything else like that, there's no real way, a new player that really doesn't have anything outside of, like, a relatively good computer can really raid on any sort of a serious level, and even on like a casual level, because most people just don't really want to have to deal with somebody who makes constant mistakes. What I would really like to see in general, is for them to kind of take the focus off of raiding as an end game and make other avenues for players who are not really as serious about raiding or don't really enjoy the concept of raiding, and give them something else to where they can advance themselves and move up in, and then make raiding, I guess, like, more rewarding for the players who do enjoy to do it. Pigeonholing everybody into raiding the way that they've done in Mists of Pandaria and now again in Warlords of Draenor, I think has hurt them more than it's helped them, even even though they've tried to make it to where everybody can enjoy the same content, there are just some people who don't enjoy that type of content. And instead of trying to make it so easy for them that they can just AFK through it, I think they should look at what kind of content that player would enjoy and try and give that to them. It's really kind of common sense whenever you think about it, and it's really kind of weird that this stuff isn't really happening. And especially now, whenever you have 4 different raid difficulties, and all of the raid difficulties outdate the previous raid entirely. It used to be where patches would kind of add content into an expansion, and 6.2, if anything, has taken content away from Ward to Draenor, on release, which is really kind of hard to do. There's no real reason to do Heimal. There's no real reason to do BRF. It's just not really a rewarding experience, and I think at that point, they really should kind of look at the way that they have, raid tiering set up, and, in the process of kind of making everybody able to raid, they've outdated so much content where people just kind of are in this feedback loop of repeating the same content over and over and over. And I mean, there's got to be a reason why, almost 50%, maybe over 50% by now, we're going to have a new, subscriber numbers report soon. There's a reason why so many people, probably 50% of people by now, have quit the game. And so I do think that this has a lot to do with it, having to raid, having to go into the raid. Whenever you finish the raid on one difficulty, you just do it again. And I don't really think that a lot of people are having fun with that. And I hope that in Legion they create more avenues for casual players, and not just casual players, but hardcore players in terms of time spent. Hardcore players who do not like to raid. They give them more avenues to advance their character in a meaningful way that are outside of just traditional raiding. And so hopefully we see that happen. And I do think that whenever we look at raids right now, making these changes to make raids a more tiered, advancement in difficulty is a very good thing. And I hope you guys kind of see where I'm coming from. I know that a lot of people might disagree with me on this, but I do think that removing abilities is a better strategy and a better way of handling things rather than just making them easier. That's the way that like heroics used to always be in Burning Crusade with the 5-man heroics. And so whenever I look at something like that, and I think that that's kind of like the golden age of raiding was like Burning Crusade and Vanilla really, and Wrath of the Lich King was more of like the pug raiding golden age. And so I would really like to see them going back to that in a lot of different ways, and this is an example of them doing that. And so I really hope to see more changes like that and like this implemented in the future. And so this is kind of hopeful for me that maybe they are trying to make a real return to form. But anyway, guys, let me know what you think. If you're glad about this, if your guild sucks, if this is going to let you kill Gorefiend, hey, how about that? And, if you're like one of the people who doesn't want to have anybody else kill the bosses that you're killing, I guess this probably isn't too good for you. But it's just the way it goes. So let me know what you think. But other than that, that's pretty much all I got. So thanks for watching. And like, comment, subscribe.